Hey everyone, welcome back. And today for our educational video for this month, we are going to be doing it on a TV show, and also I think it's also a graphic novel or a comic book or whatever it is. There's a movie, a TV show, and anything else you can look at. And it is Snowpiercer. Snowpiercer, if you guys have not heard of it, is kind of a post-apocalyptic, or I guess it still is an apocalyptic TV show. That is, they are on a train, and outside, basically, an ice age is happening. So, let's go ahead and get into Snowpiercer 1001 Cars Long. So, first off, I'm going to say that since there are movies, TV shows, and books about this, I am mostly going to be going off of information I found from the TV show with some information from the movies. I have not read the books. I need to at some point. But most of the information that we get is going to be off the TV show with some from the movies. So, first off, the freeze is very, very similar in all aspects to like the books, movies, TV shows. So basically, the Earth's temperature was rapidly rising due to climate change, and then wars made Earth's temperature even hotter. This caused the ice to melt and all the species on Earth to start to crash. So the freeze is the consequence of them trying to fix the warming of Earth. So they used a chemical compound known as CW7 to lower the Earth's temperature. CW7 caused a massive drop in temperature, which they were kind of happy about initially, but then it kept going down, eventually bottoming out to negative 100 degrees Celsius. So, before Snowpiercer's departure, it was already at negative 40 degrees in June, and then at departure, it was negative 45 degrees Celsius and getting colder by the minute. So, CW7, it was, of course, a cooling agent that was used to cool down the temperatures of the planet in response to climate change. CW7 was originally engineered to last 1,000 years in order to protect the Earth from global warming for that long. It proved to be too effective and instead froze the planet, starting a new ice age. And CW7's, I guess, freezing the planet was predicted by Joseph Wilford, which is the creator of Snowpiercer. So he predicted that CW7 would freeze the planet, which led him to convert Snowpiercer, which was eventually going to be a luxury liner, to an ark to save humanity. And then if you look here at the pictures on the bottom here, you can see that on the left here, this is a picture from the movie because it said that CW7 was distributed around the world by planes, whereas on the TV show, it was missiles that put it into the atmosphere. So basically, what CW7 was a stratospheric aerosol injection, which is a proposed method of solar geoengineering or solar radiation modification to reduce the global warming. I do have a picture also up here in the corner that we can kind of follow along if you want to. So what the stratospheric aerosol injection would do is it would introduce aerosols into the stratosphere to create a cooling effect via global dimming or increased albedo, which occurs naturally from stuff like volcanic winters, which if you watched I think we had a video on climate change, and we talked about how volcanic eruptions can decrease the temperature of the Earth because of like sulfur and ash inside the air. But an aerosol is a suspension of fine solid particulates or liquid droplets in the air, or it could also be another gas. Natural aerosols are stuff like fog, mist, and dust. So, in simple terms, the aerosol would block sunlight, causing Earth to cool. So if you look at the picture right above me here, you can kind of see what they would do. So basically what the aerosol would do is you would put it up into the air, and then the sunlight, instead of hitting the Earth, would hit the aerosol and reflect back up into space, which would then cause the Earth to start to cool. So in theory, it was a good thing, it was a good idea, but it just worked too well. And also, the 1,000-year thing was probably a bad idea, anyways. You think you would start out with something like, oh, let's start up for a year. Like, let's go for a year, maybe 10 years at most. But no, they're just going straight for the 1,000-year. So now that we've got over what the cause for the creation of Snowpiercer is, let's go ahead and look at the train. So how long is Snowpiercer? Snowpiercer in the TV series, the number of cars does change. But originally it was 1,001 cars long, like I said in the title, or I guess whenever I was like initially talking about it. But 1,001 cars long, and it's about 10 miles long. And as you can see in the picture here, you can see kind of all the train in its majesty. Like, this is probably the best picture that we got in the TV show about how big the train is, like a good picture, because this is a big loop and they're going around it, and you can see all the cars. Well, technically you can't see all of them. Some of them are off screen, but this is most of them. And 1,001 cars long is insanely long, and I assume, just because it would mess with me if it's not, I assume the one car at the very end is counting the engine, and then the 1,000 cars are just like regular train cars or whatever. So these 1,001 cars are divided between different sections. So, of course, we said that the one car is probably the engine, and then all the other 1,000 cars are divided between first, second, third, and the tail. So, first class, of course, I guess I didn't mention this, but originally, Snowpiercer, the luxury liner, they were selling tickets. And basically, it turned into an arc for the rich. So the rich people bought tickets for the train to try to survive the cold. So that's why there's first class, second class, third class, and tail. First class being, of course, the ultra rich. So the first class area is, of course, really, really nice. So it has a library car. It has an aquarium car, which also has a sushi bar there. It has first class dining, first class guest cars, which each family has their own car, or at least most of them do. Then there's a bowling alley and also a sauna car. That is just a small section. I'm sure there's quite a few others that we didn't get to explore in the TV show, but you could tell that it's very nice. Like, the whole world is basically ended except for this train, and these people are still living up life. Then we have second class, which is still nice, but not as nice. So it, of course, has the mess hall where they eat at. It has the night car, which is kind of like a bar kind of aspect. And then it also has a carnival car, which we see in season, I think it's 2 or 3. It's either at the end of 2 or season 3. Then there's third class, which is kind of the working class people. So these have stuff like the agricultural cars and the markets, and they also have the seed bank there. They have a tea room car, and mostly this one is like AgSec takes up a lot of space. Like, that's going to be all the like greenhouses and animals. And then there is the tail, which is really, it was meant to be cargo containers, but are now living quarters. Because we'll probably go over it a little bit more when we talk about the tail. But whenever the train was being boarded, there were quite a few people that did not want to die in the Ice Age, so they decided to get on the train by force. And they end up getting on at the tail, the cargo area. And this is where the tailies live. So, how long has the train been running? There's a slight, well, not really a slight difference. There's quite a few years difference. So, in the movie, it is 18 years the train has been going on. And also in the movie, it says it takes 1 year to make one complete circle around the world. That is different than in the TV show, which I do like that it takes 1 year to make one revolution. That's pretty nice. I do like how even it is. Also, 18 years sounds great. I don't know why. But since we are going mostly over the TV series, we are going to be going over how long the TV series has been going. And that is 6 years, 9 months, and 26 days at the beginning of the TV series. And instead of 1 year, one circle, it is 2.7 times a year every revolution is around 133 days. And the train started in Chicago. So yeah, if you look on the map here, you can see right here in the United States, that's Chicago. That's the first stop, or where they started. And I assume it goes clockwise, okay? So I assume it would go from Chicago over all the way to Greenland here, and then make its way over into Europe, go around Africa, go into Asia, go around Australia, and then go through Russia, and then get back over into Alaska and go back into United States. And then, of course, go into South America and then back to Chicago. So, very long trip. I don't know exactly. Well, actually, I think at the very end I do have how long this is, because I have a miscellaneous information slide that like I kind of pull things from, because I'm not 100% done with this. I want to add more to this, because there's an idea I want to do. But that is the train's route. So basically, the main thing that they wanted to do for this luxury liner is to go to tons and tons of different cities and stuff like that, because this was all built, the railways, before the freeze was happening. So they basically, like I said, was a luxury liner, and they wanted to go to tons of nice looking cities for all the ultra rich. So, the train car size. There are many different types of cars on here, but these are kind of the main ones, and then also an average size of them. So, since there are many different types, there are first class type A and B, second class type A and B, and third class type A and B. Based on in-universe math, the average length of the cars is a little over 16 meters, or 52.5 feet. This is from the TV series. And based on the blueprints in the title credits of the series, the average car size is 40 feet long, or 13 feet and 6 inches wide, or 12.2 meters long and 4.1 meters wide. That is from the TV series also. So, we have two different sizes here that are quite a bit different. So, in the universe, of course, they say it's, about 16 meters or 52.5 feet. But then also in the blueprints that we see, it is around 40 feet long and 13 feet. So, which is correct? Well, thanks to our own Joseph Wilford, we do get an estimate that he gives us. So, he says at one point in the series that the train is 10 miles long. So, if you do a little bit of math here, you can, I do have the math here, but the average length of a car is about 15.56 meters. And if you do the math there, so 10 miles is equal to 16.09 kilometers. And then 16.09 kilometers is equal to 16.090 meters. And then you divide that by, at the time, which I said that it's a 1001 cars long, but that does change throughout the series. Sometimes they gain cars, sometimes they lose cars. But if you divide the 16.090 meters divided by 1,034 carriages, or cars, then you get 15.56 meters per carriage or car. So, given that, it is much closer to the in-universe math average length. So we're just going to be going with about 15.56 meters, or pretty close to 16 meters. So inside this 1001 cars, or 1001 plus cars, they have to, there's a lot of people on these cars. So they have to eat, of course. You can't save that much food in all of the train. I guess you could have quite a few, rations and whatnot, but you have to eventually be able to grow your own food. So the AgSec cars have the greenhouses and also cattle. So I have a list here of some of the different foods that they had in the series that I caught up on, and then when we get to the greenhouse cars, there'll be some more. But first ones, these are the ones that I caught in an initial watch. So there are apples. Of course, there's two types of them, red and green apples. There are oranges. There are strawberries. There is beef, which they can make milk and cheese from. There are chickens, they have eggs. There are fish, lettuce, carrots, tomatoes, wheats, stuff like that. And those are just the foods that I caught on an initial watch. Now, there are in the title sequences and stuff like that, and then also in, I guess, conversation in the series, we do get them mentioning different stuff that I also caught later on. But there is one food that is above all the worst, and it is the protein bars. So these protein bars are rectangular bars of a substance commonly used as food throughout the tale of Snowpiercer. And it's not technically said in the TV series what they are made of. But since the movie, it is said what they are, we're going to go off what it is in the movie. And the protein bars in the movie are made up of cockroaches, and it's shown in a scene where the cockroaches are ground up in a machine and turned into these bars. Which, don't get me wrong, insect protein is a good way to get protein, but the way it was shown in the movie was just so disgusting. So disgusting. And these people did not know that they were eating ground up cockroaches. And it was disgusting. So only the people in the tail, the ones that I said initially, like, tried to board the train whenever it was leaving, that's what they're fed. It's just these protein bars. And I do have a picture here of them if you want to look at them in their jello-y disgustingness. So, how many people are there on Snowpiercer? Well, it's a 10-mile long car, or I guess train, and there are 1,001 cars long, so you'd assume there could be quite a few people on here. It's hard to know exactly how many there are, because it's never, like, told exactly. Like, it's not like a manifest or a crew or anything like that that says how many there are. But thanks to Joseph Wilford again, we have an estimate that he says. And it's also the same one that gave us the 10-mile long estimate. So, in a quote that he says is that 3,000 souls, or 3,000 people, stuffed into a 10-mile steel tube. So, we are going to go at about the 3,000 people estimate, because that's the only estimate we have at this point. Now, there are people that die at some points, and there are people that are born. Well, I think there's only really one person that's born in the TV series, but there are people that die. So, I mean, 3,000 plus or minus however many. So, I assume that his number is counting the people in the tail, which are 400 people. And then also, there are people that are in an area called the drawers, which I assume are not included because they are basically kind of in like a not really a cryo, suspended animation. They're not really eating, they don't really take up resources, they're just kind of there. So I assume he's not including those people because they are not like actual active members of the train. They're just in the drawers. So I've mentioned Joseph Wilford a few times here, but let's go over him a little bit more. If you look above me, you can see a picture of him from the TV series. It is a different person inside the movie, but Joseph Wilford is the founder of Wilford Industries. Prior to the freeze, Wilford envisioned a luxury liner train that would circle the globe. And like we said before, Wilford foresaw the Earth would be frozen. And with the help of Melanie, he repurposed his train into an ark called Snowpiercer. Wilford is shown to be ruthless, relentless, and with little regard to lives of others, as well as not feeling a sense of right or wrong. And from what has been seen in the TV series, he values the ideological power above all else, and was willing to leave Snowpiercer and its population to die when it could not get his way. So, his natural charisma and almost intoxicatingly suave personality allows him to win over and influence many people. So, initially in the TV series, he's not there. He shows up later on in the TV series, and whenever he shows up, everyone is straight up just like, oh, Mr. Wilfred, oh, like, come, like, join us, come help us, and whatnot. And he is not a good guy. I think it's mentioned at one point that instead of being like an arc, he basically still wanted to have the luxury liner, and he basically wanted to be kind of like a king of his own little, I guess, country. The train would basically be the country. Like, he wanted to be the king of the rest of humanity. That's basically what he wanted. So not really a good guy, but very charismatic. He can turn people over to his side very easily. So, since we have been talking about the train, we should probably talk about the engine. So, the engine is also known as the engine eternal or the eternal engine, and it is the propulsion method of Snowpiercer. I have a picture of it here right above us. That is, of course, like I said, from the TV series. So, the engine is a perpetual motion machine that propels the train forward with the use of hydrogen gained from the snow outside the train, and without any obvious need for maintenance. Now, it's mentioned that like they do have to fix things, so it's not like it just works forever and it'll never break down. They do have to fix things, and they say at some point that I think they said at one point it's held together by duct tape or something like that. But it is powered by hydrogen. So the secondary function of the eternal engine, or the engine, is that it's a power plant for the car's bogie motors, or what powers the train to move, and also onboard batteries. And as such, the speed of the train is directly tied to its power supply. So the faster it moves, the more power it has to power all the different train cars, agsec, heating for the train, everything else that you need. So if the train were to slow down, at some points in the TV series, they have rolling blackouts where they might have to cut heating or power to a train car so that all the rest of them can stay. And while Wilfred created the technology, Melanie was the one who built the Eternal Engine, which Wilfred took credit for because, of course, he did. So, like we said, the engine uses a hydrogen perpetual motion technology with energy siphoned from that to provide electricity. And then also the waste heat is distributed throughout the train. A series of ports or intakes are on the sides of the train, which takes in snow to then be converted to hydrogen. And then also the extra snow that is melted is also used to supply water for the train. The average speed of the train appears to be around 170 kilometers per hour or 106 miles per hour. And the maximum speed of the train should be around 200 kilometers per hour or 124 miles per hour. So basically what happens is as the train is driving, it opens up the ports on the side, snow comes in, the snow is melted, some of it is separated from the hydrogen and oxygen into just hydrogen, which is burned, which produces power. The extra power is used to power the train cars. Any extra water is sent through the train for the people that live on there. So, if we're going to talk about the train, let's go ahead and talk about the one that we see, well, we initially see in the TV series and the movie. So, the tail. The tail originally served as 2 or 3 tail cargo cars, and these cars were overrun by stowaways, which were later named tailies. And during Snowpiercer's departure from Chicago, this is when they got on. I do have a picture here above me that shows how tightly packed they are back there. And the cargo cars offer very little space and is a tight environment, just big enough to survive in. And there are almost 400 people that live in just these 3 cars. And there are also 2 holes in the sides of the train car, the hull, on either side of the car. And these are used to freeze the arms off the tailies as punishment. So, sometimes throughout the series, there have been revolutions where the people in the tail, or the tailies, try to make it to the front of the train. And when they do this, and they eventually fail, they usually will take a couple people, and they will stick their arms through the holes out into the negative 120 degrees Celsius air. And I don't know how long it took actually. They had a timer at one point, and they would just let the arm freeze out there, and then whenever they took the arm out back into the train, they would hit it with a hammer, and it would bust into millions of pieces. So, not a great way to lose an arm, but that is kind of the punishment for the tailies whenever they do something wrong. Then we'll talk about the drawers. I mentioned before that I assume the people in the drawers are not included in the 3,000 number of people. But if you look in the very top here, you can see a picture of the drawers, which are basically just a wall of drawers which people are put into. It kind of reminds me of a morgue. But the drawers are a type of suspended animation where they are pumped full of a suspension drug. This drug slows aging, but hair and nails still grow. At some points in the show, we are shown that the guy that runs the area with the drawers, he does go through and he'll clip the nails and cut the hair of the people that are in there. The drawers serve as a humanity's lifeboat. If the train is not already a lifeboat, the drawers are. It's the last hope for survival and have been designed to save 396 pre-selected persons based on their genetic profiles or aptitudes. And there are 12 rooms of drawers. So basically, it's a failsafe. So if resources were to crash or some other issue was to happen on the train, like, I guess the greenhouses broke down or something like that, they could put almost 400 people in suspended animation until it's livable again, I guess, on the train, until they figure out something. They have also been used to hold prisoners for punishment. Patients frozen in the drawers require a lengthy wake-up time and procedure before they can fully recover. That's something that in the series they have not totally figured out completely, because there are people that die in the drawers, and then also when they wake up, sometimes they have very, very bad reactions to it, because it was not totally 100% figured out before the train took off. They've kind of been figuring out as they go. So there is also the aquarium and sushi bar, which is used as a restaurant where only the best seafood is served, of course. The majority of the car was occupied by a large aquarium with a glass corridor inside. You can see the picture there. And the aquarium was also accessible from the top of the car, where swimmers were able to dive there with ease. So you could kind of swim around in the car. It is not entirely said how many or what types of animals are in the aquarium car. I know there have been... When we see the car, we've seen certain animals, but I don't want to say that entirely, like, oh, there's this one, this one, this one. Because we don't know exactly how many there are or 100% what types are in there. There is also the night car, which is kind of the bar area. The night car's original purpose was to serve as a brothel for Wilfred, but instead it is used for people to relax and unwind. It has alcohol, music, dancing, and at one point there is a fight night. And the fight night's basically... there were a couple people that would fight, and basically it were third-class people that were fighting for the chance to become second-class, an upgrade. So I understand why they would want to try to do this, because like instantly going from third class to second class would change your world, and then also possibly any children that you might have on the train. So, one thing that really jumped out at me whenever it was said on the TV series. So at one point in the TV series, they mentioned the honeybees. And you guys, if you've looked at my other educational videos, you know that I did a video on bees, and specifically honeybees was one of the big ones in there. But honeybees, of course, are used for pollination of the agricultural crops and also would provide honey. There were bees on Snowpiercer, but it is mentioned in kind of like a offhanded comment that the honeybees died out 3 years ago due to colony collapse. So their honeybees are extinct in the world from what we know. And now they would be now everyone on Snowpiercer, like at the agricultural section, would be reliant on either hand pollination or wind pollination to grow crops. Now, we are not 100% sure that there are not other insect species or other bee species on Snowpiercer. It's never really said. So there could be, but I assume that there's probably not. I assume probably honeybees was kind of the one that they had. They could have had other bugs or anything like that. They could have had other types of bees, but I really doubt it. I think they would have mentioned it if there were, or we'd have probably seen them if we were. So I'm assuming that hand pollination and wind pollination are the way that they grow crops, which would make it very, very, very hard to grow crops when you have to go to every single one and pollinate every single flower. Or, like I said, there's some plants that can do wind pollination, so they could have had like a fan going on them to blow the pollen around. But wind pollination would not work for every single plant. So that instantly puts kind of a damper on the creation of food. Another animal that they had on Snowpiercer, which still really bothers me that they have this many, but are cows. So you can see this picture here, and one of the cows I want you to like look at specifically is this one right here. This cow, on their heads, they all have a number, which I assume is what number of cow they are. This one has 121. That means that there are either A, 121 cows on Snowpiercer, or B, there have been 121 cows on Snowpiercer. I'm more likely to believe that there have been 121 cows on Snowpiercer, because having 121 cows to feed on Snowpiercer would be insane. So I assume that they've probably been breeding cows on Snowpiercer, and that's just the 121th cow. So there have been or were at least 121 cows on Snowpiercer, like we said, but very early in the very early in the series, the species is killed. Cows are extinct due to a breach in the cow car, and every single cow is dead. So I think that actually happened like episode 2 or 3 or something like that. So already very early in the series, we already have an extinction event. Cows typically take around 1 to 2 years to reach maturity. An average cow weighs typically from the range of 800 to 1,500 pounds, depending on breed, age, and purpose, if they are beef or dairy. Which we know there are definitely dairy cows on there, and I would assume there are probably beef cows too. Which, technically, I guess dairy cows could be butchered for beef. I know they wouldn't be the best beef. So I assume they probably have regular beef cows. And we know there are dairy cows, like I said, because of the cheese and milk we see. And all of this rest of the bit, this bottom bit, I'm going to probably go over in a later video, because I want to go over how likely or how believable Snowpiercer is that people can survive on there. So I have all this other stuff on here, thinking of how much food they have on there, how much food the cows would need, and how many calories each cow and each pound of food or meat would be. So, I mean, we're going to go over it, but I'm going to go over it again in a later video, most likely. So, on average, a cow consumes 2 to 3% of its body weight in dry matter per day, and it looks like in the picture we saw that there are 14 cows per car, with at least 2 cattle cars, but there are most likely more. The median weight of a cow between 800 and 1500 is around 1250. And if you multiply that by the middle of 2 and 3% is 2.5%, which would mean that each cow would need 31.25 pounds of food, And since we had the 14 cows per car, which would be 28 cows, that would mean that 875 pounds of food per a day. That would be what they need for the cows, which is a lot of food because we already went over that there are like most likely 3,000 people on the train. There are also at least 28 cows. So that's already starting to get to a lot of food. But the cows do have other uses other than food. Of course, they make milk and cheese. You get the beef from them. Also, the cow poop was used to produce methane, which could be used as fuel or also fertilizer. Then I also have the math here saying that this is estimates, okay? It's not perfect, of course, but I used the same estimates from the same site. So 1 pound of beef is around 1,137 calories. And 28 cows times they're around 1,250 pounds, which would be 35,000 pounds, which we multiply that pounds times how many calories per pound, which would give us around 39,795,000 calories for 28 cows. And like I said, this is like the average weight and the average food and everything, average calories. So that's kind of the math behind that. I'm wanting to go over that more in a later video. But there are also chickens, which chickens I feel like are a much, much better use of space and also food production because they give you eggs, and also you get the feathers. I assume you could probably use the feathers for other stuff. First thing I thought about was to use them to make bows and like arrows for bows, but they don't have bows and arrows. But also you could use the chicken poop for fertilizer, and they're also very, very easy to take care of. So here's a picture of one of the poultry cars, which I assume there are probably more of them, but this is one. You can notice there's multiple shelves of them, and there are, looks to be 4 chicken cages per a shelf. So, and each shelf has 2 layers. So I have math over here for it. Let's go ahead and go over chickens a little bit more first. But providing meat and eggs, each chicken lays about 1 egg per day, and it typically takes 5 to 6 months for a chicken to mature. It's very easy to take care of, and they don't really eat much. A full-grown chicken eats about 1/4 a pound of food, and they weigh around 4.5 to 15 pounds depending on their breed and on their sex. It's estimated there are I estimate around 72 chickens in that one car. And we are only shown 1 car of chickens, but there may be more. Average weight, since we're going between 4.5 to 15 pounds, is around 9.75 pounds. There are 72 chickens times 1/4 would equal 18 pounds of food to feed all these chickens every day. And 1 pound of chicken is 1,085 calories. Do all the math for all the chickens for a pound of meat and how many calories. It would be around 761,670 calories. So I feel like that's a much better use because cows eat a lot more, and really chickens have a not quite as good a calorie count because it's more of a lean meat, but are a better use of space. So really, if anything, I know they want to have cows, but cows would probably be much more for the rich people, and chicken would probably be more for the working class. There is also salmon, which we do not technically see them on screen, but they are mentioned. And I also have a picture up here, which shows the salmon stock on the train. And you can't really take that for, like, it's not really up to date. So, I mean, you can't take this to, like, the exact numbers, but the purpose of the car is to raise and grow aquatic animals and plants, namely salmon, and it houses approximately 800 salmon, I'm guessing at max, and it provides meat and salmon roe or salmon eggs, which would be like caviar. Typically takes 1 to 6 years to reach maturity, depending on the species and environmental conditions. There are a lot of different types of salmon that I did not know about initially. So there's a large difference in size, and we don't really know what type of salmon there are, but the most I guess eaten type is the king salmon or the Chinook salmon. So that it's on here with also other types of salmon. So the average weight is very different depending on species. The Chinook or king salmon is between 10 to 50 pounds, which other species are between 3 to 15 pounds. And average feed, I found a lot of different types of this. This one seemed the most right in my mind, but also there was not very much information on it. So the average feed conversion ratio for farmed salmon is about 2.42 pounds of feed for every 2.2 pound of body weight. So they eat more than they weigh. Salmon are carnivores and primarily consume small fish, crustaceans, and other marine creatures. So that would make it a little hard to feed the salmon because you can't really feed them all of the vegetables and stuff like that you're growing. You'd have to find some sort of. They probably have some sort of small fish being grown to feed these salmon. So they probably have another aquaculture car that have some other smaller type of fish, crustacean, or marine creature to feed the salmon. So the main food producer is the greenhouse cars. So the greenhouse cars, we are told that there is 131 cars of plants. So that's not including the cattle cars or the aquaculture cars. So there are berries, which there are strawberries, and chili peppers, grapes, cherries. There are potatoes. I also have how many cycles they do of them. So there are 14 cycles of berries. There are potatoes, 7 cycles per year. Cocoa, which that surprised me when I saw the cocoa there. I really suspected them to just have cocoa stored away instead of actually growing cocoa. And there is wheat, 4 cycles per year, rice, 3 cycles per year, sugarcane, 2 cycles per year, cotton, 2 cycles per year. And then these ones, I'm assuming, well, the lettuce and carrots, cucumbers, and other vegetables, I assume are grown at all times just to have food. Then there are also Florida oranges, apples, mangoes, avocados, bananas, grapefruits, olives, and probably other fruits. These are grown, of course, they are seasonal and whatnot, which I I have a problem with them growing this many trees and on a train car. This is one of the ones I had to do a little bit more look at because they would almost definitely have to be dwarf trees, okay? They couldn't grow full size like orange trees, apples, mangoes, stuff like that. They'd almost have to be dwarf species to be able to grow in a train car. And I need to do work on how many. Because, if you see this picture here, okay, you can see how many oranges and apples there. Like, the top two baskets are apples. So there's red apples, green apples, and then there's 2 things of oranges, it looks like. I need to look up how many orange trees they would have to produce that many oranges or apples. And also, if it had to be a dwarf tree, how many can a dwarf tree produce? So, I mean, that's what, I need to do a lot of math, okay? I need to do a lot of math and figuring and try to figure this out. But this is basically all the plants, or a majority of the plants that are grown on Snowpiercer that are to feed everyone. So one of the big things, because I'm a big strawberry fan, I have a fairly big strawberry patch. So it's mentioned in the 2nd episode that there are 14 strawberry crops on Snowpiercer. So my best guess is that they have 14 agricultural cars that are just for strawberries, because they really wouldn't be able to mix and match strawberry species, because certain ones will produce probably strawberries at different times of year, and then also since they're doing rotations, they'd probably have them hibernating at different times or having cold periods. But let's go over this anyways. So strawberries are not really hard to grow. Just make sure they're watered and they should be fine. I haven't had a problem with mine. But most species only produce once or sometimes twice a year. So they'd have to have different crops going at different times to have strawberries all the time. They also require a cold period to rest, so they can't be growing at all times. And because of this, they want strawberries regularly. They would have to have multiple crops in rotation, like 14 crops they said. On average, one strawberry plant produces about 1 quart of strawberries per year, which is roughly 1.5 to 2 pounds, which then again is 680 to 907 grams. I've done a lot of math. Math's not my strongest subject, but I do it for you guys. So on average, 793.5 grams of strawberry, with a medium strawberry weighing about 12 grams. This is about 66 berries per a plant. And a medium strawberry is approximately 19 calories. So yeah, they are making a lot of strawberries, and they only have 131 carts, but they are saying that 14 of these are strawberry carts. I feel like strawberries are more of a luxury plant and not a plant that's like a needed plant. I feel like they should probably have more potatoes or wheat or something else than 14 strawberry cars. But I mean, hey, the rich people have to have their strawberries, am I right? There are other mentions of animals in the series. So there are goats mentioned and pigs, and then there are also other animals in the aquarium car. So I mean, I think at one point they mentioned that instead, since the cows died out, they were going to be using goat farts for methane instead of cow manure. Uh, but yeah, these are mentioned, so there have to be other cattle cars. I don't know how many goats or pigs, because 100% they are not shown in the series. I've watched the series one time all the way through, and also I'm watching it a second time since I made this. And then also on the wiki, I could not find any pictures or any numbers about how many they have. So we know that they have cows, chickens, goats, pigs, salmon, and then some other saltwater animals in the aquarium car. But that's all we know. So, the reason why I am doing this, and you could probably tell already, I think I mentioned it also, is that there are an estimated 3,000 people on Snowpiercer. So I wanted to figure out if 3,000 people, plus all the animals and whatnot, could survive on Snowpiercer for the amount of time they're in there. Because they're almost at 7 years. They hit 7 years during the first season. So how much food would it take? How many calories would it take to feed 3,000 people plus the animals for 7 years? That's kind of what I want to do the math for. Now, I don't know how in depth I'm going to get, because I feel like I'm going to be like really nitpicky, because it's like, oh, well, there'll be like a couple thousand calories just for this or whatever, and oh, they probably have scrap food that they don't eat that they probably get fed to the pigs. We won't be able to do all of that. But if I can at least figure out if they could grow enough calories on 131 cars of plants, greenhouse plants, and then also feed the cows and chickens, if those are all correct, I feel like it would be possible. Maybe not probable, but possible. So, the American Heart Association, or AHA, recommends that the following number of daily servings of each food group for adults, based on a total of 2,000 calories per day. So we're going to say that each person on Snowpiercer requires 2,000 calories, which there's going to be some people that don't need 2,000 calories. Like there's some kids. Kids don't need as many, depending on what age they are. Like teens, of course, eat a lot more. But also older people don't eat as much either. So average 2,000. So they're going to need at least around 2.5 cups of vegetables daily, 2 cups of fruits daily, grains 3 to 6 servings or 3 to 6 ounces of grains daily, with at least a half of the grains being whole grains. Dairy, 3 servings or 3 cups of dairy per a day, which that's going to be a hard one to hit. Like vegetables, they probably could do that. Fruits, they have a lot of oranges, they have a lot of strawberries, like that. I don't know if we could hit that. Grains, they almost definitely have. Dairy, they'll have to have a lot of dairy cows. I don't know how much dairy a cow makes within a day, but they had to have a lot of cows to do that. Protein. This one I don't think is going to be too terribly hard because they have the salmon and chickens and cows. Uh, Protein 1 to 2 servings or 5.5 ounces equivalent of proteins daily, which this could be nuts, seeds, beans, peas, or lentils. Doesn't have to be actual animal protein, but could also be like seafoods and whatnot. So you don't have to have animal protein. They could be like vegetarians or have much less animal protein and mostly have some sort of vegetable with proteins. Then also fats and oils, stuff like that. But I did the math on this, okay? And for 3,000 people at a 2,000 calorie per a day, they would need 6 million calories every single day. That is insane, okay? To have 6 million calories every single day. All the people on Snowpiercer. That's not counting the cows and chickens, salmon, cows, pigs, everything like that. That is counting just the humans. So it's going to be hard to say that it is very likely. But I have also some miscellaneous information here that I've been pulling from. This is stuff that some of the stuff I have not used and some of it I have used and I assume to probably use later on. So in the TV series, I said earlier that I didn't know exactly how long the railway was, but in the TV show, it is 318,000 kilometers a year they go. Then in the movie, it's said that it's a circular railway that extends 438,000 kilometers. So the movie's railway is quite a bit longer, and also they try to make 1 year rotation, well, one rotation per year, whereas the TV series does not. The quote 3,000 souls stuffed in a 10-mile steel tube by Joseph Wilford. I had that on there because I'm like, I used that in 2 different places, at least. The grilled cheese and tomato soup one I have on there because that's the first thing that Andrew, no, it's not Andrew. Andre Layton. That's the first thing he eats when he goes to Up Train. He's a tailie, and he's also the main character of the TV show. But the grilled cheese with tomato soup told me already that they had wheat on the thing. They had cows, dairy cows, to make the cheese. Then also the tomato soup told me that they are at least growing tomatoes. And also, I'm sure they had herbs and whatnot in there. So, I mean, that told me already a fairly good amount of what stuff they had on the train. The 2 kinds of apples for the greenhouse with the oranges and 14 strawberry carts. The 130, just like this one quote, meaning that there's 131 agricultural cars. The 121 cows on multiple trains. That one was so, like, when I saw the 121 on that cow's face, I'm saying, like, you did the math for me. It's perfect. But like I said, I assume there's not 121 cows on there because if there's actually 121 cows, I could do the math real quick actually. So we have 14 cows per a car. So we do 121 divided by 14. That would mean that they had probably 9 cattle cars. It's 8.6 something. They would need 9 cattle cars just for cows if they had 121 alive at all times. But then again, I have on there that the second episode of season 1, cows went extinct. So, I mean, you don't actually have to, like, I know we're only counting up to the 7-year mark, but if we are counting to the end of the TV series, we'd only have to count the cows for 7 years. The 12 rooms of drawers with close to 400 people in it. We went over that. Every passenger has a chip in their hand, which is used to open the doors. The only people that don't have it are the tail passengers, the tailies, because they forced their way outside, didn't buy a ticket. There are points in the series where the tailies do kill people and then take their chip to move up trade, which is a pretty cool idea. Honeybees dying out 3 years ago due to colony collapse. That's a big one that really hurts the survivability of the train because since they don't have honeybees or really any animal to pollinate their plants, they have to be using wind pollination or hand pollination. There's no way to go around it. And then the 400 people in the tail was just to know how many people were in the tail. Um, that is all I have for this right now. Later on, I want to look a little bit more into the math because I need to see how many like apples a tree can produce and how tall a tree is to see if a full-grown tree could fit in there. Almost definitely has to be a dwarf tree. And how many they produce to know how many apple and orange trees they would need. I would assume they could only have maybe at most 4 to 6 trees within a trig car, depending on how big the trees are. Like in the picture of the greenhouse, I guess we can go back. Oh, it's right there. In the greenhouse, you can see they have 2 trees here. So these trees here, I'd assume, are the size of probably the apple or orange trees, and they can only have 2 of them here. So I guess in possibly the 14 strawberry cars, they could have 2 trees in each one. I don't even know what tree this is off the top of my head. It's blooming at the time. I'd have to look at the blooms and the bark to figure it out. But yeah, I guess they could have 2 trees per train car of the greenhouses to grow. That'd be a good use of space. But yeah, I will continue working on this. It might not be the next educational video we do because it's going to be a lot of math and it's going to take some time. But look forward to possibly a second part to this one where we do a little bit more about Snowpiercer. I would highly recommend watching the movie and TV series. It is one of my favorite apocalyptic TV series. Whenever I watched the original movie for this, I sat there, I'm like, I want to know what all the other cars were. Like, I don't know how long Snowpiercer was in the movie. I don't think it's exactly told. But we didn't really get to see all the cars. Whereas the TV series, you get to see a ton of them. Like, they go through cars, and they mention cars, and you look around, and it gave you a much better look at the train in general. So I was really happy when I found out the TV series was a thing, and I watched it. So, highly recommend it. Really, the first season is probably the best one for Snowpiercer. The second season is pretty good, too. After that, it kind of goes downhill, but really, all of this stuff I was looking at here, except for the Wilfred quote about 3,000 people on a 10-mile steel tube, all of the information I had was based on season 1. Yeah. Then, like, season 2 really doesn't give you very much else based on survivability. So that made it easy. But yeah, so go watch Snowpiercer. I'd highly recommend it. And look forward to our second part, I guess, of this. I don't know how long it'll take. So don't be expecting it very soon, but I would assume next year. So anyways, thank you all for watching. This was the educational video for this year. And well, this month. Yes. And I will see you guys next time. So, bye-bye.